everybody, welcome back. My name is Cassie, I'm the Evil Secret Ninja, and this is my YouTube channel, and I talk about books and review books on my channel. So today I am doing my wrap-up for the week for October 3rd. So these are all the books that I finished last week, all the ones that I'm currently reading this week, and what I plan to pick up next. So I finished 10 books last week. It was the end of the month, so I was kind of stuck a couple extra in there. You know, when it gets to the end of the month, I might finish a book and I have a little bit of time, so I usually like slip in a manga or something just so that I can start the next month fresh. The first book I finished was Of Kings and Killers by Will Wight, the third book in the Elder Empire Sea trilogy. So this was kind of the wrap-up of that, and thought it was actually really fun. It was a lot of fun to read. This was probably my favorite one out of the trilogy. I can kind of see some relationship between this series and the Cradle series, and suggesting that it probably happens in the same universe. And there is a companion one to this, which the books are all named a little bit differently. It takes place like at the same time as those other books. It's just following a different group of characters. This one was a lot of fun. Enjoyed it. The whole trilogy was a lot of fun. The next book that I finished was The King Beyond the Gate by David Gemmell, and this is the second book in the Draenei saga. Kind of like the last book, this book is also about a battle. This is a battle that happens. This book takes place several years after the first one, and this is one man's search for vengeance, even though he's somebody that doesn't quite fit in his society because he's the product of a war, and so people on both sides are wary of him and don't quite trust him. I enjoyed that one a lot too. I'm actually kind of wondering, like, is the next book just going to be about a battle? For the most part, the first two books, like the first 2/3 are about the preparations for the battle, the things that the army is worried about, and then the last third is the battle. So, and I'm wondering if the third book is going to follow that same pattern. The next book that I finished was Clay's Arc by Octavia Butler. This is the third book in the Pattern Master series. So Pattern Master was these two immortals who decided they wanted to have, see if they could breed children that had similar qualities to them or had similar abilities. So they were just trying to see what they could do and what kind of children they could create, and if they could create children as powerful as they were, or that were immortal like they were. This third installment takes place in the future. I mean, it's still kind of the same thing. There's definitely this idea of like this breeding program going on, but it's not with the same. Like, you could read this book and it would not, you wouldn't learn anything about the other first two books in the series. So I'm wondering if the fourth book is going to kind of bring these two together. But in the third book, there's kind of also like this idea of like breeding going on and creating a different type of human, but this one involves a alien, they call it a disease, so I don't know if it's a parasite or what, but it's an alien entity. So it was pretty good. It was a little bit different. I think, if nothing else, these books intrigue me enough that I want to keep reading them. The next book that I finished was The Well of Ascension, which is the second book in the Mistborn trilogy. This was a reread for me. I've been reading with my kids because I'm introducing them to kind of a higher level of fantasy as opposed to like middle grade, or they were just kind of skipped YA. Although I guess in some instances this is considered YA. I guess I would say, I think Brandon Sanderson, as far as writing fantasy, his books are accessible to a larger audience. So with Grimdark or something like that, it's not necessarily appropriate for all ages, and I think that Brandon Sanderson, even though horrible things happen, it's more accessible to a little bit younger audience. The next book that I finished was called 5 Tribes by Brian Nelson. This is the second book in the Course of the Empire series. The series is a science fiction about, I guess, like nanotechnology, where they can use this nanotechnology to kill people or spread diseases and make people stronger or make equipment better. And it's kind of like an arms race for this technology, and people who are trying to steal it and people who made it who are trying to protect it, and all the different uses that they're finding for it. This series hasn't been too bad so far. The next book that I finished was Bird Box by Josh Malderman, and this is the first book in the Bird Box series. And this series follows a woman and her 2 children as they are running away from creatures of some sort that manipulate. If you look at them, you go crazy and you kill yourself and often everybody around you. So the main character is looking for a safe place for her and her kids where these creatures can't get to them. Overall, it wasn't too bad. They have to go around blindfolded all the time because they can't risk possibly seeing one of these creatures and going crazy. The next one that I finished was The Heart of What Was Lost by Tad Williams. This is the prequel to The Last King of Ostenard. So this takes place after the Green Angel Tower, watching like the aftermath, and I enjoyed that one a lot. The next 2 were some mangas. It was end of the month, and I was just, trying to finish up the month. And that was the Komi Can't Communicate, number 7, and number 8. And these are by Tomohito Oda. And this is about a girl with a communication disorder. She's trying to make friends because everyone kind of thinks that she's a little stuck up. And the reality is that she's just petrified of talking to people and getting to know people. And so she's got a couple of friends and that kind of understand her situation. And they are helping her navigate the social world. They're a lot of fun. A lot of times you think of mangas and you think of so a lot of times when you think about manga and stuff, it's like the crazier ones. Like we got One Punch Man and we got Death Note and we got Uzumaki and that kind of stuff. But they also write these mangas that have like some really deep themes and stuff to them. And of course they're geared toward younger people, like a kid that might have a social problem that can read that and go like, hey, you know what, now I don't feel like I'm so alone. And the last book that I just finished yesterday, was Master of Sorrows by Travis Call. And this is the first book in the Silent Gods series. And this book follows the idea that we always kind of pick up the Chosen One arc. But what if the Chosen One is actually the villain? Our main character is kind of on this journey, and we're not really sure like if he's going to choose to be a hero or if he's going to choose to be the villain. It kind of sounds like his lineage is a little questionable, that maybe he is the son of like this evil god. And the reason that they say that about him is because he was born with a deformity, and in this town where he lives in, if you're born with any type of deformity, you are stoned. And so he had a teacher that kind of covered it up. He's missing an arm, and so his teacher found this magical arm that he could wear, a magical prosthetic, and so nobody knows that he's missing an arm. I have to say, like, it did not go the way that I thought it would. When I picked it up, I thought it was kind of considered a middle grade, but I think that it's probably not, at least a young adult or maybe an adult, because there's quite a few horrible things that happen in it. So it was a little bit darker than a lot of middle grade that I've read. So those are the books that I finished this week. So the books that I'm currently reading are Jade City by Fonda Leigh. This is the first book in the Greenbone saga. And this is a fantasy. I won't say that it happens like, it's like an urban fantasy isn't like going on right now, because there's certainly like no cell phones and stuff like that. So I'm not sure when exactly the time period is, but it's centered around the cell of Jade, and Jade is what gives people magical abilities. The next book that I'm reading is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, and this is the fourth book in the Stormlight Archives. This is the most recent one, we're following a group of people who are kind of like fighting for their lives and everything. So kind of a classic fantasy. Brandon Sanderson is doing a great job, like talking about people's struggles and mental illnesses and stuff like that. So I'm enjoying this so far, and it's a nice big one. So it might take me a minute to read. So the next book that I'm reading is called Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in the Six of Crows series, and this takes place in the Grisha-verse, and we follow kind of these 6 characters as they're trying to, I guess, continue on what they were doing in the first book of Six of Crows, which ended with a lot of them not in very good places, and so we're picking up with them, and so we're continuing to follow them and see what happens next to them and see what they're going to do, and really kind of what they're all about, because some of the characters in the first book, you thought you knew what they cared about. You know, like one character is concerned about money and getting his score, and maybe there was a little bit more to him than you thought. And the last book that I'm currently listening to, this is the one I listen to with my kids, and that is called Seeds of Rebellion by Brandon Mull. This is the second book in the Beyonder series, and this is a middle grade. So this is a middle grade portal fantasy about a couple of kids from our world who go through a portal into another world, and this world is kind of like falling apart, and they were given a quest to kind of overthrow the wizard over this world. So it's been exciting so far, and excited to get back to into that world. So that's what I'm currently reading, and these are the books I'm going to pick up next. So after I'm done with Crooked Kingdom, I'll pick up Weird, The Power of Being an Outsider in an Insider World by Olga Khazon, and this is a nonfiction. I presume it's about what it's like when you don't quite fit in. I believe it's about kind of introverts and what they're about. And after I'm finished with Jade City, I'm going to pick up Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. This is the first standalone in the First Law world. It takes place after the events of the First Law trilogy, so I'll be excited to see what that's about. I don't think I'll be finished with Rhythm of War by then because it's so big, but if I am, I'll probably pick up The Graveyard book by Neil Gaiman. And this is about, I believe it's about a kid that lives in the graveyard, and he's hiding from demons, and something about the graveyard gives him the ability to walk through graves. Alright, so that's my wrap up for this week. Those are the books I finished. That's what I'm currently reading, and what I hope to pick up next. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. And I put new videos out Monday through Thursday.